As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICANN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized CIMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a CIMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICANN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the CIMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study exam. Start studying the CIMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
It's a great day. It's a great year, 2024. What can we say other than to say thank God for life, thank God for being alive, because we last saw in 2023. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and it's the 4th day in the month of January 2024. We're here together again, saying thank God for making this happen on your special program, your most educative program, ICANN on Air. Tosi, why are we not grateful to God?
Of course, we are very much grateful to God who has preserved our life to witness another year, 2024. And of course, we are certainly grateful. Not everybody could witness this year. And this being the very first episode on ICANN on Air, I think we deserve to be grateful and show gratitude to the Most High God. I'm Tosi Akinomi, FCA, saying welcome to the first episode of ICANN on Air today.
Okay, and I remain Fumi Olani. So this year is going to be fabulous. We have so much program lined up for you for this week and also for the entire year. So today is going to be something different because we want to set the pace for 2024. But Tosi, you can then shed more light on the guests we have on the program today.
Yes, for me, 2024, every new year comes with resolutions. Every new year comes with expectations, especially for professional members of our institute. So if today we are considering the Nigerian economy, expectations for 2024, I'm sure our audience want to consider what exactly are we expecting in 2024. Just this morning, we woke up with a rumor that the PMS price is 1,200 naira, and everybody were like, is that correct? Could it be so? Is this the new thing we are to expect in 2024 and all that? But of course, we have our own erudite in the house today in person of Dr. Muda Yusuf, who will be shedding light on the topic, expectations for 2024, the Nigerian economy, expectations for 2024. Of course, our guest on the show, Dr. Muda, is an albino, of course, is widely known in Nigeria and beyond. And of course, even on ICANN on Air, this is not the first time. He has come so many times on the show and he has come to share his experience and skills. Dr. Muda Yusuf is the immediate past Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, LCCI, and is currently Director and CEO of Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise, CPPE. I wouldn't say more than that. Like I said, Dr. Muda is widely known. But however, we'll go on a short break now. But before this short break, something happened. We lost a gem. Fumi, we lost one of our revered presidents last week in person of Mr. Emmanuel Itoya Ijewere at the age of 77. That's a big loss to the institute. It's a big loss. We pray that God will grant the family, will grant them fortitude to bear the irreplaceable loss, and of course the members of the institute where it belongs to. God will also give us that fortitude to bear his irreplaceable laws. So,
Amen.
for me, what do you have to say about our revered past president, who was the president between 1986 and 1997?
I would say he was one of the people that set the pace for accounting and also taxation, and he's known for VAT in Nigeria. So we want to say, may his soul rest in perfect peace, and God will grant the family the fortitude to bear the loss.
Amen. Amen. So let's quickly go on a short commercial. I'll be right back with the guest on the show, and we'll quickly move on the expectations for 2024. Don't go away. Stay with us.
As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICANN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized CIMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a CIMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICANN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the CIMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study exam. Start studying the CIMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Okay, it's still Icon on air, and like before the break, we said we're going to have an erudite scholar in the house, and I mean, he's not a stranger to Icon on air, and we're so proud of you. We're so grateful for you to accept our invitation to be here today. Dr. Muda Yusuf, you're welcome, sir. Hello, Dr. Muda.
Yes, I'm with you.
All right, you're welcome. I just wanted you to say something to the audience so they know you're with us in the studio today. So say thank you so much for being here, sir. And I mean, you've done so much in terms of business wise and financial analysis for the nation, and we're so happy that you have accepted to be here today. So perhaps I want you. I mean, a lot has happened even in this year, 2024. I mean, we started with December, and a lot has happened within the economy and everything around Nigeria. So it's a new year, and generally you have expectations from people, from organizations, and even from different nations across the world. So what would you say, sir, about there are lots of economic activities that are taking place? In fact, today a lot has happened, and definitely we know that the news will carry some of those information tonight. So would you want to share some of the in-depth knowledge and skills and expertise that you have around the economic dynamics across the globe, sir?
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. My appreciation to the ICANN on Air team. It's a great opportunity and a great privilege to address this cream of professionals. And let me also extend my commiseration to ICANN on the loss of the past president of ICANN, our erudite Mr. Jewelry. Now, talking about the economy, let's start with a brief review of the economy in 2023. I was speaking to some people and I said, anyone that survived 2023 will survive anything, whether you are individuals or you are a business, because it should not get worse than that. And I believe that it cannot be worse than that. So my belief from what we experience is that we can say that the worst is probably over. as far as the economy is concerned. I say this because of the peculiarities of 2023, which are not likely to be repeated in 2024. First, let me say that we had two major transitions, as it were, in 2023. And those transitions had significant implications for the economy. The first was the political transition. The second was a kind of economic transition. The political transition, of course, has to do with the elections and all the challenges that came with the elections, the uncertainty, the violence, court cases, all manner of things happened, and that created its own problems for the economic players. Because when you have uncertainty hovering around an economy, it's not something positive for the economy. The second major development around the economy in 2023 was the Naira redesign policy. The Naira redesign policy messed up the entire first quarter and even beyond, because it turned the economy completely upside down. It paralyzed some critical sectors of the economy, especially the retail sector, the distributive trade sector. And as you know, most of those who are producing things and who are rendering services, at the end of the day, their products end up at the retail end of the market. So the Naira redesign was we are not likely to see a repeat of such an incident in 2024. Then the two major economic reforms that we had were the fuel subsidy removal and the foreign exchange convergence. Those were the two biggest economic reforms, and the impact on the economy was very profound. The reforms were necessary, in my view. They were inevitable because it was necessary to pull the economy back from the brink, which is why we needed to have that reforms. Unfortunately or regrettably, the impact was very severe, both on businesses and on the welfare.
Okay. Tosin, I guess Dr. Muda's network is faulty. Okay. So you may have to reconnect to another network source so you can be clearer on the program.
Are you with me?
Okay, yes, you're back,
back
sir.
now. You got a network glitch.
So network issues. My apologies.
Yeah,
please.
it's okay.
So,
it's okay.
So those were the issues in 2023. I'm saying 2024 will be better because those issues are not likely to repeat themselves in 2024. And beyond that, the government has taken a decision that the Naira will redesign permanently. So we are not likely to see any such thing again in 2024. The second major development, which we are hoping to see in 2024, is the fact that we are likely to see less importation of petroleum products. This is important because our import dependence for petroleum products had a significant effect on our foreign exchange. It's putting a lot of pressure on the foreign exchange market. We are spending anywhere between $1 billion to $1.5 billion importing petroleum products. And from all indications, a good part of that pressure will be taken off, with the Dangote refinery coming and with the, some NNPC refineries and even some modular refineries. So that is likely to help to conserve our foreign exchange. The second major expectation this year is the fact that the CBN is likely to make a lot more progress in the clearing of the backlog of the maturing obligations in the forex market. The more we are able to make progress with that, the more we're able to restore confidence in the foreign exchange market, and the more we're able to stabilize the market. As you know, developments in the foreign exchange market is very critical and very central to investors' confidence generally, whether you are talking of domestic investors or we are talking about foreign investors. Then there's a lot of progress around dealing with issue of the crude oil theft, which will help to ramp up the oil. Then also a lot of progress with regard to fiscal consolidation. I'm talking about the improvement in government revenue. The trajectory we are seeing is that the level of government revenue is likely to improve significantly in 2024, going by the tax reforms and going by the effect of both the fuel subsidy removal and the reform of the foreign exchange market. And if the fiscal space improves, then the macroeconomic environment is likely to improve. So let me pause at that point so that we can progress with the questions.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you very much for laying the foundation with regards to all that happened in 2023, and particularly your assurance that if Nigerians could survive 2023, certainly we could survive anything. That's what an assurance that could be.
And Tosin, like a clergyman said, he said, if you survive 2023, you definitely need a certificate of survival. It means you did well in 2023. So we're not afraid of what 2024 holds, really.
That's a good one. It's an assurance indeed. It's an assurance indeed. Okay, moving along, sir. Some quarters believe in Nigeria that Nigerian economy is particularly complex, complicated, and confusing when compared to the economy of other nations. What is your thought about this, sir?
Well, you know, economics is a science, even though it's a social science. And one of the attributes of a science is some measure of predictability. But because it's a social science, there's a human element to it, which sometimes can make it not completely predictable. You know, so it is that component of the human element that sometimes makes it a bit complex, because sometimes you cannot predict exactly what the outcomes will be. Now, most of us that are economists have canvassed for some of the reforms we have today: the fuel subsidy removal and the exchange rates convergence. But not many of us thought that the outcome would be as devastating as it had been, even though those reforms were necessary. That's an indication of how unpredictable some outcomes can be. Secondly, the fact that we have a large informal economy sometimes can make the dynamics a bit complex, because the informal economy in most cases are not within the regulatory radar. So sometimes when you take on some policies, the fact that you have a large informal economy sometimes can affect the outcomes of those policies. You know, so this is why sometimes then there is also the element of corruption. Corruption has a way of messing up a very good policy, either in terms of the implementation, in terms of the outcomes, or whatever. Corruption elements, particularly among those who are charged with the implementation of policies. You know, so those elements are peculiar to a large extent to the Nigerian economy, and sometimes they make the economy look a bit complex in terms of the management, in terms of the outlook. And also we have issues again with corporate governance. That also makes the situation a bit complex, because when you are in an environment and you have some institutions that are compliant in terms of corporate governance, then you have a large part of institutions or part of the economy that are not compliant, and yet you are in the same economy, you are facing the same market. Those things can create complications for businesses, and yet there are no adequate consequences for those who are not complying. So institutional weaknesses also create complications in terms of the outcomes of economic policy. So those are the likely factors that may have been responsible for that perception that we are dealing with a very complex situation.
Okay. All right. You as an economist, sir, how true was it that the exchange rate convergence actually led to more revenue for the government, but on the other side, it actually fueled inflation and further diminished the value of the naira? So how can we then put this vis-a-vis what is going on now?
Well, the exchange rate convergence was necessary. It was necessary because under the previous administration, there was a lot of abuse as far as the foreign exchange is concerned. And any major player in the economy will attest to this. There was a big racket, and all those who are involved in round tripping were practically in a paradise because they were just moving money from the official window to the parallel market window, and they were making a kill. So it was an open secret, even within the banking system, unfortunately. So that made it very necessary. Then it has a major effect on revenue. The revenue effect it has is that the government, for instance, intervened during the previous administration with an average of about $20 billion annually. So maybe we are talking about $1.3, $1.5 billion per month. So imagine a situation where the government was selling intervening in the market at 450, which was supposed to be the official rate. So when you throw your $1.5 billion into the market at 450, and at the end of the day, the operating exchange rate in the economy was 750. So people are making a margin of about 300, per dollar.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
This particular development led to a loss of revenue. And from even the recent reports that we are getting, the revenue impact is beginning to manifest, with government. And we were told that in the last 6 months or so, we were able to make over ₦1 trillion from the foreign exchange differentials. And I'm sure it can even be better as we progress. It's so low because the CBN doesn't have the capacity to intervene as it used to intervene. If the intervention level improves, the revenue outcomes will also improve. And definitely, of course, it had implications for inflation because the economy is highly sensitive to developments in the foreign exchange market. The economy is highly import dependent. Our manufacturing sector is heavily import dependent. So this thing had a pass-through effect on cost of production, cost of operations, and ultimately it affects added to the inflationary situation.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm still talking on the abuse of processes that you just mentioned about. So some technocrats believe that the Nigerian macroeconomic environment did not show any remarkable improvement in 2023 because of the monetization of deficits was grossly abused. Do you agree with them, sir?
Yes. Well, I won't put it that way, but what I will say is that the monetization or the ways and means finances, which is otherwise called monetization of deficits. And let me explain this for the sake of those who may not understand some of these terminologies. The ways and means finances is also called monetization of deficits. Some call it printing of money by the central bank, to be able to finance the deficit of the federal government. Now, when you have a situation where the central bank is throwing so much money into the system, ideally, the ways and means should be like an overdraft, which the law, according to the CBN, should not exceed 5% of the actual revenue of the previous year. But what we saw under the previous administration was completely different. There was a gross violation of that provisions of the CBN Act to an extent that at the close of the administration, the waste and means financing was close to 26 to 27 trillion naira. And there was no disclosure. That is even what made it worse. So it was at the end of the administration that the National Assembly was rushing to approve it to securitize it. And what securitization means was that the government was trying to legitimize it or normalize it through the National Assembly. So the National Assembly hurriedly approved it, and it's also amazing that a retroactive approval was given for 23 point something trillion, which was not initially approved. There was no appropriation, and the money had been spent. But because of the way both the National Assembly and the then executive were operating, they approved it. So that was now offloaded from the CBN books into the debt management office. So that was how the debt profile jumped from 49 trillion to 87 trillion today. So that is where we are. And you can imagine the implication of that kind of jump in terms of the debt profile and the implications for debt service.
Interesting. Okay, we are still with Dr. Muda Yusuf, and the topic is the Nigerian economy expectations for 2024. I just needed to acknowledge some of the audience that are here, and I've been seeing a lot of comments. Some are saying you're doing so well, sir, and other people have questions. But of course, we will read out the questions eventually. But I want to acknowledge Fatade Johnson, Shosaolu Olusoji, Abel Aigodion, saying thank you for joining, Zaka Abakuk, and also Ajiboye Arimaya. So we'll say thank you so much. You can get the comments going, and then we'll go on a commercial break now. When we come back, we'll please have your questions, and Dr. Muda Yusuf can take them all in. So we'll be right back after the commercials.
As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICANN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized CIMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a CIMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICANN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the CIMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study Exam. Start studying the CIMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
If you are just joining us, ICANN on Air today, the first episode in year 2024, we are in here discussing the topic, the Nigerian economy expectations for 2024. And we have our own guest in the house today, Dr. Muda Yusuf, who has been providing insight on the various questions we have here today. Feel free to send in your questions, and we assure you that within the ambit of time, we'll be able to take those questions too. Okay, so moving along on the line of the questions. In November 2023, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu appointed you as the board member of the Nigerian Customs Service. On that note, we want to say congratulations on your appointment, sir. However, barrier to trade has been a major issue in Nigeria. So we want you to speak to our global viewers on trade facilitation and what Nigerians should expect in 2024 regarding trade facilitation, sir.
Well, the concept of trade facilitation is to ease the way people do business in international trade, to reduce the cost of the processes and the procedures in international trade. The customs, of course, has a major role to play. Indeed, the custom has two key mandates. The first mandate is revenue generation. The second mandate is trade facilitation. But unfortunately, there has been too much emphasis and spotlight on the revenue functions of the customs. So much so that the meeting revenue target has become the predominant or the overriding KPI for the customs. Now, with the current administration, there's a new focus around that because the president has said repeatedly that he's committed to ensuring an investment-friendly environment, removing barriers to investment. And one of the key areas in which barriers needs to be removed is in the international trade process. So a lot of reforms are in the works currently, and luckily the current CG of Customs, the current chairman of the Board of Customs, who is also the finance minister, and as well as the president, are committed to ensuring that we have an improvement in trade facilitation. So the trade facilitation agenda under this administration is going to be much more, it's going to be driven much harder. It's going to be more elevated, than it used to be. So that is why some of us, at least two of us, were nominated from the private sector to be on the board to facilitate the driving of the trade facilitation agenda. So we are going to be part of the reform process. We are going to also be relating to operators in the private sector, get their feedback, and help to follow that through in the reform process.
Yes, with you as a member of the board, we can go to sleep knowing that you're going to perform. So thank you so much, sir, for that. For answering that question. I mean, while that question was on, Fagbola Temitokwe Adeni, he asked a very crucial question. He says, I hope this year there will be proper handshake between the monetary policy and the fiscal policy. I guess we can answer that question after all. It's not in your place to answer it. And I also acknowledge Ibrahim Mustafa for being part of this program. Alex Fabi, thank you so much for being part of this question. So, Sam, according to the International Monetary Fund, in October 2023, there's a report on the special issue which says on the in pursuit of stronger growth and resilience. So in that report, is there a way to avoid or escape the projected IMF calamity of, there's a projection of 2024 as 38.8%, which happened in 2023. So would you say that the Nigerian government debt would rise by 4.3% of its GDP, sir?
Now, first of all, let me comment on the coordination of fiscal and monetary policy. As you know, the president is laying a very strong emphasis on policy coordination. In fact, he has nominated a very senior person of a ministerial rank to be in charge of coordination of policy. So the policy coordination level is likely to be much better under this administration. That is one. Secondly, the CBN governor, Dr. Yemi Cardoso, and Mr. Wale Edun have been working together even when they were in Lagos State. They are great allies of the current president. So there is even an existing chemistry between them, both at personal and at official level. And now we have a coordinating minister for the economy. Part of the responsibilities of the coordinating minister is to coordinate policies. without prejudice to the independence of the central bank, since they are all working for the same government. So the prospect of better policy coordination, fiscal and monetary, and even trade policies are much better under this administration. Now, to your question on the IMF and the debt situation, one of the biggest challenges we have currently, one of the biggest risks to the macroeconomic environment, is our debt profile. When I was answering your last question, I said that our debt as of September was over 87 trillion. Now, with the passage of the budget, there was a securitization of another 7.3 trillion. Now, securitization of ways and means. And again, let me repeat, securitization means taking away the debt that was owed to the central bank and transferring it as a proper debt in the debt management office. So when you add the 7.3 to the 87 trillion, we are talking now about 94 trillion naira as our debt situation now. So the debt profile is a worrisome thing. And in the current budget, I think we have, we have made a provision of 8 trillion naira as debt service. So it's a major issue that we need to worry about, because when you now compare debt to GDP ratio, it's now getting over 40, going to 45%, which is on the high side. So it's a cause for worry. So I agree with you on that.
Okay, sir. Okay. Now, we cannot talk about expectations for 2024 without actually talking about the budget and the budget assumptions in particular. So some opinion holders believe that many of the 2024 budget fiscal assumptions are unrealistic, ambitious, and could be unachievable. As a seasoned economist who must have probably gone through the budget that was signed by Mr. President on the 1st January 2024, what is your personal opinion about these opinions, sir?
Well, some of the budget assumptions appear realistic to me, especially the assumption that has to do with the exchange rate. The exchange rate assumption initially was 750. It was jacked up to 800 by the National Assembly, which is fair enough. Because if you look at the official exchange rate, it's hovering between 850, 900, sometimes hitting 1,000. So that is good enough. The one that I worry a bit about is the oil production or oil output assumption, crude oil output assumption, which was put at 1.7 million barrels per day. Given the challenges that we are still grappling with in the Niger Delta with respect to oil production, and given the trend so far in the last 1 or 2 years, because we have been struggling to make 1.2, 1.3. Now we are talking about 1.7 million barrels per day. It looks a bit ambitious to me. And on top of that, OPEC quota is now even 1.5. And we are talking about 1.7. That for me is a bit on the optimistic side. Then the oil price assumption is about $78 per barrel. Again, right now, I think oil price around has been oscillating between 75 to 80. Now, that is also too close to the current price, because ideally, for this kind of assumptions, there should be a significant headroom, to accommodate some of these volatilities or some of these variations. So the assumption for oil price is also on the high side, if you ask me. But all others, I think the assumption that you can live with.
Okay. All right, sir. So, given the macroeconomic and even the microeconomic challenges that Nigerians have experienced in 2023, how can government actually drive inclusive growth across all strata of the economy rather than just, I'll say in my own word, enriching a few. Do you see the 2024 budget achieving that? I know you've mentioned how good it is, apart from the oil-based one, but how can you see the overall of this budget when you say enriching some people rather than all?
Well, when you talk about the economy, the budget is a small part of the economy. In elementary economic literature, we identify about 3 or 4 critical variables that powers the economy. The first is government expenditure, which is what this appropriation is all about. And when we talk about government expenditure, it is not only federal government expenditure, because most of the conversations around budget are focused on federal government. The federal government cannot solve all problems. We also should be engaging the state governments, we should be engaging the local governments. Because between these 2 other arms of government, they account for close to 50% of the resources of the country. So we also have a responsibility to demand accountability from them. But that rarely happens. So government expenditure is key, whether it is federal, whether it is states, whether it is local government. Put together, they are very critical drivers of the economy. The second major driver is consumption. You should have an economy where people have purchasing power. If there is no purchasing power, the economy cannot thrive. Because those who are producing, those who are investing, they are investing for people, either to service them or to sell something to them. So if you have an economy of highly impoverished people, or where there is high level of inequality, that is also not good for the economy, because the purchasing power is weak. Then the third very important variable is investment expenditure. We need to create an environment. I'm not talking of budget now. Policies, regulations. Those things help to drive investment. So the higher the investment growth, the higher the economic growth. And if investment is growing, revenue ultimately will grow. So creating the policy environment for investment to grow is also a very critical of what we should be demanding from our economic managers beyond the budget. And lastly is export. Every country needs to plug into the global value chain. We should not be too inward looking. We should be putting something out there at the continental level, at the global level. And that is about exports. It could be export of goods, it could be export of services. So we need to create that ecosystem that will allow Nigerian businesses to connect to the global value chain. So those components are as important as the budget. So when we discuss economy, we should go beyond the budget, because we over discuss budget. Budget this year is 28 trillion. 8 trillion of it is debt service. So it's only 20 trillion that is available for spending. And out of that 20 trillion, almost half of it will go into overheads and personnel. So what is left to service the economy in terms of providing infrastructure? So we need to worry about how to generate wealth from the private sector. And that is why all these other variables are important.
All right. Okay, thank you very much for your submission on that question, sir. Now let's quickly take some of our audience questions. We have one from Olanrewaju Olamesi Agoro. So what is the lasting solution to the various macroeconomic challenges facing the country? Exchange rate issues, inflation, unemployment, and persistent economic underdevelopment.
Well, these are very big issues. And they are issues that relate a lot, first, to the quality of the macroeconomic environment. And when I say macroeconomic environment, I'm talking about things that relate to the variables that he has mentioned in that question. And in order to stabilize the macroeconomic environment, we need to have a good handle on the rate at which the CBN is financing deficits, which is the ways and means that we discussed. It is not for nothing that the CBN Act says that the CBN should not be providing money to the federal government more than 5% of actual revenue, although it has been reviewed now to 15%. So compliance at the level of the central bank is very critical to ensuring the stability of the macroeconomic environment. So that is very key. Secondly, the rate at which we incur fiscal deficits. If the deficit spending is too high, if we are not keeping our expenditure within the limits of our revenue, and there is too much of borrowing, too much of pressure on the finances of government, that also creates problem for the macroeconomic environment. Thirdly is issue of productivity in the economy. Because I talked about issue of exports and even issues of inflation. It's a function, these are functions of productivity in the economy. We need to spend government resources in a way that will enable operators in the economy to be more efficient, to be more productive. And that is speaking to the issue of infrastructure. I mean, if you are talking of manufacturing, for instance, you cannot industrialize an economy if you don't have infrastructure, if you don't have power. So the spending of governments, the policies of governments should be focused on creating an environment that will allow for more productivity in the economy so that people can invest and produce competitively. Then, of course, we need to do a lot in terms of leveraging technology. Technology is critical for productivity, it's critical for competitiveness. So these are things that we need to do. And of course, we have issues around education, developing the human capital. So these are things that we need to do to ensure that we have an economy that is growing sustainably, and that is a lot more diversified than what we have currently.
Okay, sir. Because you spoke about technology, I'd like to. I have a question on that, but I wanted to acknowledge a message from Iyenoma Egeho. He says, Dr. Muda is very vast. His explanation can make the ordinary man understand the Nigerian economy, which is true. That is why we have him today on Icon on Air. So the question for me on technology is, riding on your last answer, is technology and automation are continuously being employed and deployed by different nations, and it helps the 21st century. You can't do without it. So as a seasoned economist and a knowledge coach, what is Nigeria's 2024 outlook on technology and innovation despite the soaring energy costs?
Well, if you look at the the GDP performance of Q3 2023, one of the sectors that performed the most was ICT. Even in spite of all the problems we have in the economy, the ICT sector is doing very well. Just as we have other sectors like trade, like the food and beverage, like cement and so on. And the good thing about the IT sector is that we have a very good minister driving that sector. The guy is a very young guy. The guy is hands-on in terms of technology. In fact, if you ask me, it's one of the best appointments that President Tinubu made under this administration. So the guy is on top of issues of technology. And a lot of youth, I think, are taking advantage of all the initiatives that the guy is bringing on board as far as technology is concerned. So I'm very optimistic that we are going to achieve a lot in the technology space. Of course, There is still for a lot of investment in some key infrastructure, like the backbone, like the fiber optic cables that need to be laid. And we already have a very ambitious plan under the minister to cover the entire country with these cables. So with that ministry and with the kind of minister we have, I'm very confident that in a matter of 1 to 2, 3 years, we see a major transformation in the ICT space. And a lot of people, again, have been worrying that ICT is going to create unemployment, is going to, I don't share that view. I believe that the ICT is an enabler of, ICT cannot replace human beings. Artificial intelligence cannot replace human beings, So it's a major enabler, and I think we are on course and we're in good hands as far as ICT is concerned under this administration.
Yeah, thank you very much for that response, sir. Let's take another question from the audience. Shehu Adeyemi is here asking, why are the masses not feeling the impact of subsidy removal despite the increase in revenue to the 3 tiers of government? Over to you, Dr. Muda.
Well, that's a very important point, because the subsidy removal, in a way, has also moved resources from the pockets of the people into the treasury of government. Of course, it has other advantages, blocking loopholes, corruption, smuggling, and those are other advantages. And the expectation of the people, and rightly so, is that with the subsidy removal, the benefits of it will be plowed back. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a significant impact of that. We have seen some social intervention programs here and there. Only recently, we heard that the lady in charge of the social investment program has been suspended. There are issues of fraud and all of that. EFCC has stepped into the matter and all of that. So it's something that the government needs to do a lot more of. The reforms are good, but the social consequences are enormous. So we need to mitigate those social consequences. And as citizens, we need to continue to demand accountability, because that is what democracy is all about. I agree with the person who has the question. We need to see a lot more impact in terms of cushioning the effects in an inclusive way. Of course, we have seen some soft loan distribution of maize and all of that, bag of rice in some states. But whether that is inclusive or not is the question. We need something that is much more inclusive. Need something that eases the cost of living, the cost of food, the cost of transportation. I think that we need to see more of that under this administration.
Okay, sir. For those that are in Nigeria, it's your right to demand for what is rightly yours. So, this is the question about the jackpot syndrome. It's not strange. Everyone knows what is going on currently. Is there anything that government is doing to stem the tide of jackpot syndrome, especially among the youth and the middle-aged professionals, sir?
Well, the world is becoming a global, I don't want to say a global village, but the level of mobility in the world now is extremely very high. So if you take off from here now going to UK, by the time you get to UK, maybe you probably even haven't gotten into Ibadan. So it's as easy as that. And in these days of technology and people working remotely and all of that, I don't think we can stop that, and I don't think it's even in our interest to block anybody who has a talent to be mobile, to just go wherever they can go. What is important for us as a country is to continue to invest in the development of our human capital, to continue to create the environment for people to find satisfaction in working here. But for me, there's nothing wrong if people find opportunities that will better their lives, that will improve the loss of their families, their dependents. If they find it elsewhere, why not? But we need to ensure that we create a lot more in terms of investing more to develop human capacity. We need to do a lot more to ensure that we create the environment that reward these talents so that more of them can stay here. I mean, don't forget, annually we get diaspora remittances of over $20 billion.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money coming from our diaspora. Some of them have gone, some of them are back to set up businesses, to set up hospitals. They have better exposure and all of that. So it's not an entirely bad thing. I think it's something that, of course, we can see how we can maximize the benefits and ensure that we invest more in our human resources. We have a lot of youths, a lot of people seeking admission, no invest. So let us expend more resources on developing our human capital.
Interesting. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Doctor, in closing, as the immediate past Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce, LCCI, and the current Chief Executive Officer.
Hello?
Okay.
Peter?
Okay, go on to say.
Okay.
Hello?
So let me take the question again so Doctor can get me some. So I said in closing that how can you, of course, being the current CEO of CPPE, so how can your center and ICANN collaborate to make Nigeria's 2024 economic outlook brighter, better, and positively impacting?
Well, it's about synergy between institutions. What we do in CPP is essentially advocacy to ensure that we have the right kind of policy environment, the right kind of regulatory environment that will facilitate the growth of investment and the growth of business. Our advocacy needs to be strengthened. It needs to be more potent. It needs to be more inclusive because the government needs as much ideas as they can get. No, not all the ministers also have full knowledge of, industry knowledge of where they are. So they need a lot of feedback from those of us that are stakeholders in this economy. So we will explore opportunities for synergy. And let me say also finally that as accountants, we also need to be on top of our business strategy, to help the resilience of our institutions. We need to minimize the exposure of our companies or of our clients to foreign exchange because foreign exchange is becoming a big issue. The greater the exposure of companies to foreign exchange, the more difficult it becomes to be able to navigate the current challenges. We also need to be careful on leveraging. Too much exposure to debt. Interest rate is extremely high now and it's likely to continue to be high. By the time the CBN begins its MPC meeting, we are likely to see more tightening of monetary policy. So we have to be careful the way we expose our businesses to borrowing. Then we need to also advance on energy efficiency. We cannot continue to burn diesel and burn petrol the way we have been doing it. Things are changing. So our energy economics must be much better in 2024. And finally, the government will be coming with a lot of pressure for revenue. All the agencies of government have been mandated now to be chasing revenue. So as accountants, we should have to devise a strategy on how to manage these pressures coming from government institutions and tax authorities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for being here today. We truly had a knowledge-filled session on today's Icon on Air. I mean, on behalf of the council, the management of the institute, and also from the members of Icon on Air, we want to say thank you so much for being here. And we hope that next time you definitely yield to our call to be here again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity of this interaction. Thank you very much.
And Happy New Year to you, sir.
Happy New Year.
Have a good evening, sir. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. So Tosi will go right into the announcement for the day. Okay.
Okay. For today, we have the announcement that by March. Are you with me, Fumi?
Oh, yes,
Hello?
go ahead. Yes, go ahead, Tosi.
Okay, go ahead, shoot. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay. We are in.
All right. I think Tosi's network is a bit fluctuating. We just have the ATS examination. Make sure you register on time. And also to say RIP to our very own past president, Mr. Ijewere. Thank you so much for being part of the institute and for building this strong institute for us to live in.
For the examination.
Okay, so on behalf of everyone, we want to say thank you so much for being here and have yourself a lovely evening. My name remains Fumi Olani, and my co-anchor Tosin Akiwumi FCA will say have yourself a lovely 2024 year.
Thank you very much, and bye for now.